if you learn one thing on the guitar, you automatically know 12 because of having like a capo on the guitar.
Yeah.
And so I call it the musical lottery. So I always show kids like the E minors. So those 4 chords become 48 chords, and you put a capo on and you can do it anywhere. But those 4 chords are, I don't know, maybe 80% of all the stuff you're hearing on the radio. Like there's all kinds of,
the truth.
Yeah. And so I'm like, if you learn those 4 chords, it's not like any other subject. You can go and sit at any campfire, any backyard barbecue, and you can play along with people. You don't have to, with saxophone, like you'd be sitting there for a while learning all the different scales and fingerings and stuff.
Yeah.
So I say, if you want a quick, easy way in to music, it's the guitar. It's portable. That's one of the main reasons. Like you learn an E minor, a G, a C, and a D. And I know lots of guitar players, like different teachers I work with, that David Dow and I have recorded. That's all they know. They know 4 chords and they have a capo, and they know tons of covers.
Welcome to the Vocal Lab. I'm Sarah Ramsey, and this show aims to pull back the curtain on the entertainment industry, where veterans give up-and-coming artists some of the information they wish they'd had when they were just starting out. Sort of a music industry primer, if you will. Welcome to the Vocal Lab. I am so pleased to have with me today Stephen Richardson, who is an accomplished musician, educator, and twice JUNO-nominated artist, recently recognized as the 2024 JUNO MusiCounts Music Teacher of the Year. As the creative force behind the solo project Agony of the Leaves and guitarist-songwriter for the Canadian indie rock band Three Across the Eye, Richardson's music has reached national and international audiences through platforms like CBC TV, syndicated shows such as Wild Kitchen, and the documentary Pixelated Heroes. His work has also been highlighted in Canadian Musician magazine, with notable recognition for the song Where's the Sleep, nominated for Best New Single at the 2022 Northwest Territory Music Awards. As a dedicated music educator in Yellowknife, Northwest Territories, Stephen integrates inclusive teaching practices, focusing on neurodiversity and cultural representation in music. He's a graduate of the prestigious St. Francis Xavier University Jazz program and a passionate advocate for innovative, student-centered music education. With endorsements from JT Riboloff Samick and Andrew White Guitars, Stephen is the co-owner of Double D Rockstar Studios and continues to compose, perform, and mentor aspiring artists across Canada. Thanks so much for joining me today, Stephen.
Thanks very much, Sarah.
It's really nice to have you here. We've gotten to work together in some other capacities in the past, but it's nice to get to hang out and talk music today.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So do you want to tell us your story briefly for listeners who are just meeting you for the first time today, a little bit about your journey and how you got where you are today?
Yeah, my journey to music and to the JUNO Awards. End up here in Yellowknife is kind of strange, I guess. I started, I always loved music. My mother was a really great gospel singer. My father's a reverend and he loves to sing as well. And I didn't start playing guitar though until I was 21. I came from a very small town in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, Grand River, with a population of about, I guess growing up, we'd be like 75, 80, with probably 90% of the people there having gray hair at the time. So it's a really aging population, and there wasn't much to do other than swim and fish and hunt and play street hockey, ice hockey, and just listen to music. So I started I joined Columbia House, got their 11 tapes for a penny. My mother had a fantastic record collection, Miles Davis, Dionne Warwick. She had some musicals. My mother's Puerto Rican, and she grew up in Puerto Rico and New Jersey and around New York. So she had like West Side Story, and she got us really into the sound of music and different things. Mm-hmm. But a lot of jazz. I think that's what I gravitated towards the most. I have, she passed away the end of the year I came up here the first year. So I have a lot of her records, Miles Davis, Sketches of Spain, Dave Brubeck. And I was always into it, but I didn't think I'd be able to like really actually play an instrument. We had a music teacher for a year, and then she passed away suddenly, and they didn't find another music teacher. So I tried picking up the guitar myself when I was really probably grade 3, I guess. And I know now why it failed. The guitar I had was just complete garbage. It was like you could sleep underneath the strings. The action was so high. It was just like really, really bad. And I had those Ernie Ball books. I guess they have an eagle that teaches you how to play the guitar. So it's a picture of an eagle. It's kind of different. But that didn't work. And then when I was 21, after I went to St. Mary's in Halifax, I had a really good friend. I was writing lyrics all the time. And my first degree is English and creative writing. And my friend said, why don't you just pick it up yourself? Because I was bringing my lyrics to parties and to barbecues and to the dorm and trying to get people that were guitar players to make the music for us. And I had one friend who's now a teacher, Aaron McDonald. He took one and he put it together a little bit. And at the time, it was just like, I didn't realize like you're going to have to really structure the way your words are to make them into a song. So it was kind of more free form. And I would make like, I mean, I was pretty intense. I would make like my own CD. So I had the CD booklet of all my lyrics and I draw the cover and you'd open it up because I was always pouring through like Tragically Hip lyrics and Eddie Vedder's lyrics and different people like that. And I just, then finally my friend said, why don't you just try it yourself? I said, I can't. I'm 21. Like you're too old when you're 21 because all those myths were around that you can't do it. So finally I listened and my friend, one of my roommates sold me his really kind of Strat copy rainbow colored guitar for $50. And I went around asking, my plan was ridiculous. I went around asking all my friends to teach me the intro to Alice in Chains' Nutshell, which is probably one of my favorite rock songs ever. And I couldn't figure out at the time like why the first 4 chords, they had this nostalgic kind of sound to them. I know now theory-wise why it is, but at the time I was like, why does this sound like this compared to what I'm hearing? And the first chord's an E minor 7. And when you're looking at an E minor 7, it has the high part of, it has an E minor here, but it has the high part of a G here. So it's kind of a major and a minor kind of put together. And that was the sound that I was hearing, but I couldn't put it into words, I guess.
Yeah.
And so one of my friends taught me E minor. Another roommate taught me part of another E minor 9 or something. So I ended up learning 5 different versions of the E minor 7, 5 different versions of C, and it's C add 9 in the song. One friend taught me just straight D, but it's like D sus and sus 2, sus 4 in the song. So looking back, it kind of helped because I learned a lot of different shapes. But my plan was to learn it and then quit. I was really into Seinfeld, and I just thought that would be pretty funny. You just learn a song and then you quit. It obviously didn't work. So then I just started playing like constantly. And around the same time, my mother, she got lymphoma, and she came and lived with us in Halifax during the chemo treatments. I was living right beside the hospital. And around the 3rd treatment, I was just we given her our bedroom, and I was in the living room on an air mattress. And I said, I'm just going to apply to DAL, apply to any of the schools that I can put in a audition tape, because I couldn't play a song. But I was like, I had a plan, like if I get a Fostex 4-track and I record measure by measure over a year, I could kind of cobble it together, like an early Pro Tools version. And it took so long. I still have the 4-track. I wore it out. Like it started to slow down, like the tape heads are wrecked. And so I put it in. And amazingly, I got into STFX Jazz. I'd learned Over the Rainbow, like a Martin Taylor arrangement. And I don't think I could play it now. Like it was really, really tricky. But over the year, I pieced it together step by step. And then when I got there, my advantage was I had worked for CIBC Bank and a bunch of different jobs, worked for the Coast in Halifax, a bunch of magazines, writing music reviews. So the advantage compared to the first time I went to university was I treated it like a job. I would get up and I would work till recess, imaginary recess, and then imaginary lunch, and then just practice as if I was going to work, which I didn't do my first degree. I'm amazed they even knew I went to class. And it was really just like putting in a lot of work. And it really taught me, what STFX taught me is that they don't treat it like a talent. They treat it like you're taking a trade. So they give you stuff and they go work on this. And then that kind of gave me some hope that you don't have to be born with magic fingers or some kind of thing that's really hard to grasp. And that's kind of what I try to bring to students. And then with vocals, like taking lessons with you as well. Like at first I thought that was the same thing. You have to have a certain tone to your voice or something, but when you give lessons, you're breaking down the fundamentals. And I took some lessons with Brian Byrne of Hi Mother Earth, and it's the same thing. Like, and a lot of the stuff on YouTube is going that way, where it's like you do the work just like an Olympian or just like a tradesperson, and it makes a lot of difference, and it gives people hope that you can do it. You can actually get into it, and really at any age. When I grew up, like people just say, well, your fingers aren't long enough for guitar. Your hands are not made the right way for piano. Like there was all that stuff going around. So it's kind of good to get rid of those myths and get more people into music. And then after that, I just combined my degrees. I decided once I got into X, I was like, well, the best thing to do is combine that I can teach English, high school English, then high school band. So I studied with Brent Bannerman in Agony, and his program is the main high school that feeds all of STFX jazz students in from Agony. And all the Trues went through his program and stuff like that. And then I moved out to Vancouver and taught guitar and English as a second language for a while, and then wasn't getting in on the school system. It was really hard back then. So I started applying all over the north. And I knew nothing about Yellowknife. I knew like about Whitehorse and the Gold Rush and that kind of stuff. But I applied and then came up here, and I've been here. I left for a year after 3 years and moved to Ottawa, but then I came back and I've been up here ever since.
Wow. Well, that's a journey.
Yeah.
Yeah. And on the Vocal Lab, we aim to sort of shine a light into the industry through the lens of what I know now that I wish I'd known then.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, if you were starting your career over again now, would you do anything differently?
Yeah, I think the thing when you go to a music program, I was lucky because I went there when I was 27, and I would go around telling my friends I'm still alive. I beat the 27 club because I got into X at 27. But I think I practiced a lot, but I think I would be even more organized in my practice. Because like jazz is like I love jazz. I love all kinds of music, but I really gravitate towards jazz. And I don't find like even now like I can't play it the way I want. But I think as I practice more and more, I'm like, oh, if I would have practiced this way earlier, and it was on my own blocks. It was like, well, this is not. I just couldn't see that this would lead to this if I actually did this. And now I realize like practicing jazz is a lot like lifting weights. Like it's just like put a time frame. You want to get to bench 300 pounds or whatever. You got to like make a long time frame and organize routine to get to that. And so a song like Giant Steps would be something like that, or any of those songs where you really just break them down and really methodically go through it. I think people that don't play jazz or even like jazz understand like how challenging it can be. There's probably 2 years after I left STFX when I moved to Vancouver. I couldn't even watch jazz. Like there's so much jazz in Vancouver at the coffee shops. I'd walk in, if there was people playing jazz, I'd just walk out. And my friend would be like, what do you do? I said, I can't. I said, I'm just watching the mental gymnastics that they're doing. And it's just, I can't even handle it. It's like, it just made me anxious. So I just, I would leave. And then, but if you see someone that's like really fluid, it's miraculous to watch, because they're like when I see a jazz player that's as relaxed as a rock player, then it's unbelievable. You can see some unbelievable stuff.
It's very true. And I find personally, I rarely will, if I'm going to see live jazz, I will rarely do that with my eyes open. Like I have to watch a show, but with my eyes closed, because it requires enough mental gymnastics on my part just to be the listener, that I need to I just need to be in the sound and not have any like other sensory input happening.
I think it's almost like certain TV series. Like I know some people like, I love hardcore and Star Trek. I love all that stuff, and I love sci-fi. And I read all the Game of Thrones back when I was in university. But there's a lot of people that can't. They got through about halfway through that show and they can't take it because it's so intense. But I think jazz is the same thing. It's you have music that is really appealing to certain minds, I guess. And other people just want to listen to a 3-chord rock song, which is fine too. And I love both in both aspects. There's some people just like love reality shows because they're mindless and you can watch them at the end of the day. But
everything has its place.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So the flip side of that question, if you were starting your career all over again, is there anything that you absolutely would do exactly the same all over again?
I think the good thing I did, like for like my band's careers, that we started playing, like we were doing 100 shows a year. Like that was, I didn't do that in the first band, and that I would definitely do again. There's some bands up here I'm seeing that, because all the information builds on everybody else's information from the past. So I know a friend's band that they have all their merch already up front. That took me a long time to get the merch stuff going.
Yeah.
And designing T-shirts. And I was really basing a lot of what I was doing off my friend's band in Halifax, Craig Mercer's Jimmy Swift band. But I think I would have started, if I do another rock band, I'd be playing mostly solo now, but if I do another rock band in the future, I would have it all up front. The same with teaching guitar lessons. I think I did guitar lessons after school for about 7 years, about 80 students a week. And I probably sold for Hal Leonard, their book 1 guitar method, probably 400 of their books. I think the smarter thing would be when you're doing guitar lessons or a band is have all that up front, so that your business is your profit. So have my own book written, my own merch. I have my friend Rob Reed's a teacher in Nova Scotia, and he has a YouTube channel, 20-minute guitar player, and he has a lot of that stuff done up front. But it's also, he has 2 young kids like I do, so he's texting me all day. He's like, I can't keep up. Like once you have to be ready for your channel to kind of take off and stuff. Yeah, so I think it's have everything. I think be organized and very planned out. I'm pretty organized, but like some of the stuff, like definitely have the merch going. It's the same as teaching. Like when you have a unit, like when I'm doing my songwriting units, it's just better to have everything thought out probably a month ahead of time, and then have avenues that you can go down when things change. So you're ready to change. Like, oh, maybe they're going to be really into piano. This group of kids will be into piano this term. So you got that ready on the side. You got guitars ready. Just being very organized and having a good plan with a flexible plan is the best way to be, I think.
So let's talk a little bit about, you've referred to your education and your educational experience, and we are in an industry that sees a lot of different kinds of education and levels of education. We have people on the rock side of things who come in with zero formal education and everything is self-taught. And we have people on some still in the rock side of things, but often more in the jazz side of things, where there's more formal education. You are someone who has an enormous impact on the formative education, musical education for so many kids. So first, I'd like to talk about what your musical education, how that has impacted your work. And then we'll move on to the kids, but how it's impacted what you do.
Yeah, the formal education definitely helps with. So my first degree would be English and creative writing, and I wrote for magazines. That was kind of my in trying to get into music, was writing for bands. So I got to interview a lot of bands back in Halifax when they were coming up, like Tea Party and Everclear, Our Lady Peace. And I got some really good information. Like Rain Maida gave me a really great interview, and I started to see the inside of stuff. So that I can bring to the class to kind of get rid of the myths of what goes on. Like the weird thing, when I first met Our Lady Peace, I thought all bands just like partied and were just like almost like I saw in the movie The Doors and stuff like that, which I now realize isn't even the truth. Like a lot of the Doors don't like that movie because they said it was not showing them in the correct light. But like Rain and those guys, when they would come to Halifax, they said the first thing they look for is sushi restaurants. And I was like, okay. And at the time I was pretty young, so I don't even think I had even had sushi yet. So you started to realize like some bands have a different outlook on health and so it's just, that was really helpful, and I could bring that to students. And then the writing aspect is super helpful, like for grants. Like that's how it all started with MusiCounts, just being able to write a good solid grant and get some our instruments fixed and stuff. And then last year I got to adjudicate for the next round of grants that were coming through, and you really start to see like why some grants are successful. So I got to pick ones that I thought would be successful and why some are extremely not successful. And a lot of times it would come down to just not being able to explain yourself very well, or explain yourself with like a lot of I guess bitterness that your music program doesn't have the money or something. And people don't want to hear that. You just want to sell the positive and what you can accomplish if you get this money for your music program. So that was really enlightening. I went through about 30 grants, and it was pretty interesting to see like why they work. And so with young kids, like there's a lot of money up in NWT for art, like supporting art up here. So I'm able to help them write grants and tell them what will put you at the top of the pile compared to just being ignored. With the music aspect, obviously you need it to teach music, but for other than needing it to teach band and stuff like that, it's really useful I've been in a lot of different kind of jam situations, band situations, duos, just being hired to be a guitarist on the side or something, or djembe or something. But having the schooling, it's really, you can really explain yourself quicker and get to the point quicker. And then when I was in 3 Across the Eye with Dave Dow, Nathan and Paul McGraw, who were twins, so I went to high school with those two guys. So they would be writing songs, but they might have a chord they don't know what it is. So then I could look at it right away and say, oh, that's this chord. And because you have that chord, you could actually sing this note inside the structure of the chord. So it gets you kind of to the place faster. Like you have people that say like they won't study theory, or some rock stars kind of, I'm really into kind of reading between the lines in interviews and guitar magazines. Some rock stars will kind of play down their theory knowledge, and then they're kind of give themselves away in a certain interview. And you're like, yeah, they definitely know something about theory. Even like I love Rick Beato's channel, and I was watching it the other night with Rick Rubin, and he's one of the only guys that kind of got him to admit that he always says, I don't know anything about music. But he played guitar all over the first Beastie Boys album. And then he finally said, like, I can play, but I'm around like the Chili Peppers and these bands that are like monster musicians. So he's humble in what he's saying, but he definitely knows something about music to be producing all these bands. So I think having some ability to like to be able to convey the language of music helps you, and it helps you if you're around people that, because it's super interesting to me when I'm around people that don't know anything about, like they're just completely self-taught. They've almost made a musical theory on their own, like their own language. And there was my friend that went to X for a little while with us. I went to see him the first night of the Junos. He was playing, I think he does 300 shows a year. And he does all just requests. It's him on acoustic guitar. He's playing the Seahorse and Halifax a lot and these different bars. And anything they request, he does. And I tried to get it out of him. Like, how are you knowing? Are you hearing it? And then you just know where it is. And we finally got to a point. His name is Roger Levat, and he said, "It's like the floor is lava." And so I'm thinking, this is how his mind is thinking. Like he'll be on the guitar neck, and he's been playing so long that he goes, "Oh no, that I can't hit that. That's lava. That's this." And then he just eventually he's only hitting stuff that's correct. Like, so he must hear the melody and then go, no, and then he just views the neck like the whole neck is lava. That's pretty funny. And the more I love talking to different musicians like that, because you start to learn, like, there's no one way to look at music theory. And that's the only part of taking jazz. Like there is a lot of snobbery in jazz. And like, I'm glad I went in there with kind of a rock and roll, grunge rock mindset, because there's some players like just play unbelievably. Like Eddie Van Halen was one of them. And he would say the same thing. He doesn't didn't know much theory, and he's holding the pick in a weird way, but it's just like that's what makes the instrument beautiful, because you can learn it on your own and come up with your whole entire musical way of doing it. And people can learn from that, because it's like just a completely different angle of looking at music. Mm-hmm. So I think like having the background, I don't think necessarily you need it. I think it's really helpful though. It's really kind of a closed-minded thing to say, I don't need music theory. I don't need to know what that chord is, because it's just super interesting. I love talking theory. I love learning more stuff, different chords. And so it's definitely an asset to have the schooling. You don't exactly need it. And now with YouTube, I think a lot of the traditional schooling of university, you can learn almost anything off YouTube. Like I think I fixed every appliance in my house off a YouTube video. My truck, it's amazing.
It is. I mean, everything is right at our fingertips now in that sense.
Especially after COVID, because so many people made channels after COVID. Like different producers put up full channels explaining every album, what mics they used. I watched a bunch of videos with your brother. He was doing videos during COVID on singing, and like everybody went on there and just like started putting out the information. So it's and watching it is so much better than. I remember trying to learn how to throw a knuckleball in grade 6, and it was from a book my uncle gave me. It was like figure 1, like this, figure 2, but it's on YouTube. Like, it's just amazing.
Yeah, it's different when you can see the visuals to go along with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or hear it in the case of music, the visuals and the audio together. Yeah. You were quoted in the NWTTA news, which I'm assuming is the Northwest Territories something or other.
Teacher Association.
Very good. In May 2024, today, more than ever, it is vitally important to let music speak to the student and their own individual backgrounds and identities. Outdated music teaching traditions, which dictated how students should hear music, how students need to learn music, how students should play music, and what music students need to be listening to in order to become a good musician, did not address their unique lives, interests, or more importantly, the rising mental health challenges they face. These antiquated linear approaches rarely considered neurodiversities of any kind. You also wrote an article in the 2023 edition of Canadian Musician where you talked about some of your creative approaches to music learning in the classroom that honor cultural music and work really well with neurodiverse students. Can you talk about some of the ways you work with students, or which some of it has included like gamifying the learning to help integrate music in their lives?
Because with me growing up, we only had the music teacher for 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I did my practicum with Brent Bannerman, it was new to me. I wasn't a band student. We didn't have band. I remember like going, man, there's like so many cases here. Like, how do you deal with all this? Like, there's just so much stuff in a band room. So I'm used to like just the whole band way. And then I started to realize people that I knew, like that's where they were coming from. They were coming completely from a band background. And for a long time, I was like, oh, my background's kind of doesn't really fit. Even like, I remember when I lived in Vancouver, like I would go into a band, you go into a store to buy band music and they'd always ask you, what's your horn? And I'm like, it's guitar. And then I remember one guy just started laughing at me. He goes, no, what's your horn? I said, it's not a horn. I went to school for for guitar. So I was like, you're kind of fighting a very traditional way of doing stuff. And for a while I did it that way. And then I started to notice I was having more success with my own ideas, and just a lot of the way, like band class with instruments like trumpets and all the different things and saxophones. A lot of that stuff when that first started, that was on the radio. Like jazz was on the radio, and jazz was like the rock and roll.
It was the popular music of the day.
Yeah, and unless you have an uncle or an aunt that's really into jazz, and they have to be like pretty influential to get you into it. They're probably not going to seek it out. Like I have a huge TV on top. When you walk into my band and music room, there's a piano at the end of the hall, and it's like a full piano. Some person left Yellowknife in an apartment building, said they left all their stuff. So the manager called me, said, "You want the piano?" And it's out of tune, but it looks like the piano in Rango. And I love that cartoon. So it's just at the end of the hall with this TV on it. And all day I leave the TV going with different live rock concerts. And kids will ask me, they say, why does Albert Einstein play guitar? I'm like, well, that's why I'm leaving it on. It's not Albert Einstein, it's Jimmy Page. So I said, you're probably not going to seek this stuff out on your own. You're going to be on YouTube watching Mr. Beast or cats falling off tables. And so I said, like, I'll leave it on and then it'll slowly seep in. I'll put on a different critically acclaimed concert every day and just let it roll.
Yeah.
So that it's kind of getting into their heads. And then I started, during COVID, we had to do something different. So the first thing is that they ordered us guitars because you weren't allowed to sing, weren't allowed to do any brass or woodwinds. I got around
anything that moved breath.
Yeah. So I got around the breath part by doing raps. We had the masks on, and we did COVID raps, and kids that never wrote anything, like they wrote so much stuff. It was like for lyrics, it was unbelievable. And I think the reason was they're looking for adults to figure out what's going on. None of us knew what was going on. It was a gong show. Yep. And so like they were just like, we're all just writing together, and I started to realize like if you start going in to how like what their world actually is, and not trying to like sell them this, because eventually they're going to be playing different stuff and they might hear a saxophone on an album. Rihanna might put out something and there's a saxophone in the background or something, and they'll be like, what's that? And then you can draw them into that, because every wall that I've hit on guitar, I've had to go and search out a new guitar player or a new book. But when it's forced on you, you just don't want to. You're like, I'll just do it my way. And their world's so fast compared to when we grew up, that it's just a lot easier and makes more sense to do it that way. So then we did stuff like we do the film scoring of video games. I'll put on I love Zelda. I played all those games growing up, so I'll put on a Zelda, one of the new ones, Tears of the Kingdom or something, on mute on the big projector. And then I'll get them to, it's on a loop, and they write on xylophones, and as early as like kindergarten, and they write the background music to that thing. And then they storyboard it and everything. And then we unmute it and we compare theirs to that. And some of them write really like stuff that's just as equally valid as, it's usually, a lot of those games are the same guy that did Super Mario Brothers. Kojo Kondo, and he writes like just it's brilliant music. I think the Beatles said that's their favorite composer. Like he writes like some really detailed stuff. So then that really got them into it, and a lot of kids that were just not putting in any effort, like they love video games. And they really got into writing for video games. And writing, even after that unit was done, they'd come in and say, hey, I wrote for this video game. And they just bring me stuff that they're working on. So I was like, if you can get to them that way,
yeah,
then you can almost reverse engineer to band. But it makes you question, like, why are we teaching band? Like, what is the point? Like, I had all my band instruments were sent out to Edmonton in the summer. I'm just getting them back. So I've done a whole almost 2 months, I guess, of guitar. And you can easily teach it as the same as band. Like I know there's some programs that they do guitar now just because they have more retention than band instruments. And you can run a guitar program cheaper. You can get like, I use Fender acoustics, like a student model, and they've lasted me since COVID. Haven't had any warp necks or anything, and it's a lot cheaper than band. Like I basically have 30 guitars for the price of maybe 5 band instruments.
Wow.
Yeah, because like you can make a really inexpensive acoustic that lasts. You can't make an inexpensive trumpet. Like Walmart was selling trumpets a while ago, and I had to write our local Walmart and tell them, like, you can't sell them to my kids. Like they look beautiful, but they're just falling apart. Like the valves don't work right. Like, so I think that's why some programs aim towards guitars or even keyboards. You can get pretty cheap keyboards, and it's just like basically a computer. So, and kids gravitate towards that. I have a full computer lab or keyboard lab of 30 really good keyboards, and they love it because they hear keyboards in the music they're listening to. They don't always hear saxophones and trumpets and trombones and that kind of stuff. So I started doing just thinking more like that and trying to think of ways that what are they listening to? They're listening to TikTok videos that have music. They're trying to make their own YouTube channels that need music, video games, Fortnite, all the different things that they're into. And then we can go back into band. Then you can take the band class and maybe learn a song that's in Fortnite or in Minecraft or something like that. And then they get more into it. And then with the neurodiversity stuff, because I always found like just coming from more of a grunge rock thing, like the whole band thing seemed very stuffy, and you got a suit and a bow tie and all this stuff. And I get it, I understand it, but I was like, a kid with autism, he might not be left behind in that situation. And so I started doing things that would kind of include them a lot more. Our own son has trisomy 21, and I started talking to the speech therapist when she's working with him each week on which words he's doing. And then for me, like I love the COVID period because the kids never realized that they could be cool, and they still hang out with their parents. It was like 3 years just hanging out with your parents. So my kids at my school, and they hang out in the class after school. We're there till like 5 or so. And we do scales, run through scales for singing. And I get them to hold hands like in Sound of Music because it's just funny to me. And so like the grade 6 and grade 3. But we started running Gaius's words all through, all his speech words through scales. And it's making a massive difference. His speech is clearer. His pitch is really good. He has like probably 40 rock songs memorized. He loves rock, like really heavy rock songs. And that was just stuff like I was just kind of more going off intuition, and then just going like, because sometimes you're just like in a groove of what you're supposed to teach, but it might not make any sense. Like, why are we teaching it this way? Maybe there's a different way. Like, we're not in the 1950s. There might be a different way that this can actually work for more and more students. And it's becoming successful. So I'll keep it up. Keep it up, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think we're in an age where we are seeing so many of our arts programs disappear. Like, I don't know what it's like in the Northwest Territories, but I know here in BC, we're fighting really hard because the band programs are being lost. And all those music programs in schools so many of them are being lost, and especially coming out of COVID, because there were years lost for the feeder programs. So then the high school programs didn't have participants because they hadn't had their like grade 6, 7 band.
Yeah.
So then the high school bands didn't have any incoming band kids, things like that. And not to mention just the funding from the government is disappearing for those programs. So not only are we fighting it from that end, but like you say, kids' interests, you're right. It's hard to have them stay interested in things that don't feel relevant to them. And you might have a handful of kids who feel interested and drawn to like the saxophone or the trumpet and fall in love with jazz. But I think by and large, if you can make music accessible in ways that they're used to hearing it or that they enjoy hearing it, and it feels like, oh, now I can make music in that way, even on a small scale. That's what you're doing, is you're creating that bridge.
Yeah.
And that's when you get retention. That's when you get kids who, whether they go into it on any sort of professional level or not, isn't even the point. The point is that they discover a joy in the creativity of music. And that is a piece that can last them throughout their lives. And that is a thing that they can access lifelong, just for themselves. I think that's a thing that we need to really support and culture in our young people, because I think we see a lot of adults right now who have been like young adults who have been so focused on more like academic type pursuits, and they're just not as well rounded. And I think we're seeing the impact in their mental health of not having those other outlets that are just joyful.
Exactly. Like I read like your Instagram feed comes up with different quotes and stuff like that all the time. And I can't remember which one I was reading last week, but it's really hard to get out of the groove of work. So I grew up. My mother was really ill my entire life, but she was at home. So like that's very different than now. Like my wife's a program support teacher at the other school board, and I'm at our school board full time. So the whole world has changed where there's two people working full time, and it's hard to get out of the groove and feel no guilt from picking up a guitar and just like playing it for a few hours or doing a crossword puzzle or whatever it is that people unwind with. So you got people like they're doom scrolling through their phone or they're watching Netflix, but they're not looking for hobbies. And hobbies are to make life bearable, so that you can. And so if you're teaching kids, like the guitar can be something that you can have for your whole life. Piano and these different instruments or vocals, because you always got your voice with you and stuff. And it can really make a difference. But it has to be that you make it a priority. So I always practice every night when the boys go to bed. And that's a habit I've had for like 30 some years. But I have noticed like it's a lot. Well, once you have kids, that's always pulling at your head. Like the practice isn't the same as like when you're in music. But I try to show kids like even for like guitar. I was trying to show adults is like if you have the guitar is different than saxophone in the fact that if you learn one thing on the guitar, you automatically know 12 because of having like a capo on the guitar.
Yeah.
And so I call it the musical lottery. So I always show kids like the E minors. So those 4 chords become 48 chords, and you put a capo on and you can do it anywhere. But those 4 chords are, I don't know, maybe 80% of all the stuff you're hearing on the radio. Like there's all
That's the truth.
Yeah. And so I'm like, if you learn those 4 chords, it's not like any other subject. You can go and sit at any campfire, any backyard barbecue, and you can play along with people. You don't have to, with saxophone, like you'd be sitting there for a while learning all the different scales and fingerings and stuff.
Yeah.
So I say, if you want a quick, easy way in to music, it's the guitar. It's portable. That's one of the main reasons. Like you learn an E minor, a G, a C, and a D. And I know lots of guitar players, like different teachers I work with, that David Dow and I have recorded. That's all they know. They know 4 chords and they have a capo, and they know tons of covers. And we've been pushing them to write their own stuff. And I'm like, they live a whole entire lifetime, and you don't have to learn anything else. You might have to throw in an F, the dreaded F that everybody hates every once in a while. But
I'm here to tell you, when I learned guitar, and I learned guitar, I think probably about 15 years ago. I had played piano my whole life, and my writing started to feel very stale. I felt like I was writing the same stuff over and over again. And so I decided to learn guitar. I never intended to play it publicly. And I just wanted it as a writing tool to write different stuff. I made my brother come with me because I didn't even to the guitar store because I didn't know what I was looking for. And we looked at a couple, and one of them had pickups. And I said, I don't need anything with pickups. I'm never going to play it on stage. And he said, you never know. And I ended up getting the one with no pickups. And within a year, I was playing on stage and had to get a different guitar. But I learned, so the first song, I had one lesson ever with my brother. And he taught me how to play Hotel California because it has all the shapes in it.
Yeah.
Right? It has all the bar chord shapes in it, plus a couple of actual, chords. And that's all I ever learned. I mean, I learned, there's a few chords I can play, the real chords, and everything else I just play the bar chord version of.
Yeah.
And between that and a capo, that's as much as I've ever learned. And that's probably as much as I ever will learn. But I was playing on stage with my band. I was never playing lead guitar. But I was playing rhythm guitar in the background, and it was enough that my guitar player could take a solo, and there was still somebody playing rhythm behind him, and it was great. And it gave me an instrument to write with, and my writing went in a completely different direction than it had when I was writing on piano all the time. And so I really enjoyed that. But just like you said, I never learned a lot. I just learned enough.
Exactly. And it can be like with the guitar, like you can get where you just have like an E minor chord or whatever. But the probably the best chord for any person picking up guitar is just learn a power chord, which is just one finger, because it's ambiguous. It's not major or minor. You can slide it all over the place. You can go all over the neck. And you can play along with any song. So you could listen to a song and learn a power chord version of it, and it's going to be good enough to be in a band. That's where all the punk music came from. All those guys were doing they're just doing that basic 2-finger shape because it becomes any chord you want. And it doesn't.
For those who are listening and not watching, a power chord. You are playing the root of the chord and the fifth of the chord, but you're not playing the third. So there's no major or minor. So you don't have, you have to know less.
Yeah. And you can't make a mistake. Like if the other guitar player was playing a D major, you're not going to make a mistake. And one way I learned it, I was playing in a band in Nova Scotia, and my friend Greg Favreau yelled across the stage, "It's major!" And I was playing minor D minor when he was playing D major. And when you learn it on stage in that in an embarrassing situation, you remember it. But then I was like, and he said, just play power chords and you'll never be wrong. If you see me play a D power chord. If you see me play a G. And I was like, I could do this with any song. I just look up the chords on the internet and I could just play. And then it opened up. I could play a power chord version of any song, but you can't play a power chord version on saxophone of it. It's a perfect instrument at any age to bring a person into music. Like I think my oldest guitar student was, Maggie DeMille was 80 when she was, and by the end of 5 years, she had a banjo. She bought a dobro. We would jam on Hendrix. Yeah, and when she took lessons, her doctor just recommended guitar lessons for the arthritis in her fingers. But she got really, really into it, and we jam on Hendrix stuff, and it was just it was great. But it's such an easy way into music. So that's one thing I'd really like to just kind of convey is to get rid of the myths that you can really start playing an instrument at any age. There's an instrument out there for everybody. There's I've said it before. There's a style of music or a genre out there for everybody. A lot of the gatekeeping of different musicians and music it needs to go away. We're only here on the planet so long. There's no one should be not allowed to play an instrument.
Absolutely, music is for everyone. Do you want to talk about how you approach the concept of storytelling in music with your students, especially coming from a creative writing background? I often talk to guests about that crossover of storytelling, because I think as a performer, it's something that we have to really consider. As a songwriter, I think it's something that we have to really consider, but I'm quite interested in how you approach that from the perspective of an educator.
Like when they're writing songs?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do the songwriting unit. I finish each year with my grade 7s. I teach about 14 classes a year. So, and it depends on the year for my schedule. 7 classes don't get me. We're the biggest school in NWT, I think, elementary school. So, I got 14, and then the other 7, usually the homeroom teacher they'll be teaching them music, and they can use my resources and stuff. But for my grade 7s, 6-7 splits, we finished the year with the songwriting unit. And this year is going to be great. I just got another MusiCounts grant to buy loop stations and recording stations, so that now we brought one group to mine and Dave Dow's studio to record, bust them over, but this year each group will have their own recording station. And I got a good vocal mic. I just got these unbelievably excellent Neumann headphones for monitoring and mixing.
Nice.
They were really, I can't believe how good they are. And so each group writes their own rock song. A couple of groups came to me and they did a commercial, some rap and country songs and different things. But when they're writing, I tell them, because they'll come up what do I write about? What should this be about? And I'm always telling them, you got to think what is your intent? And my first guitar teacher at X, Tom Daniels, he would use that word all the time. It was like a scimitar sword. When you'd be playing something, he could just see right through everything, all the BS of what you were trying to do. You're trying to impress them. And you just be like, what's your intent today? And you're like, I'm just trying to get through the lesson. But then it started to really kind of hit me as why am I playing when I'm playing? And I've taken guitar to kind of more of a philosophy kind of thing, I guess, when I play. Sometimes if I'm in a band, sometimes I won't even play. And I've had people say, you didn't even play during that song. But I say, well, if it's an improvised kind of jam band setting, if what they're playing sounds great, I have nothing to offer. Why would I play? It'd be like people talking about dinosaurs, and I have no clue about dinosaurs. Why would I just start talking to talk? So I talk to kids a lot about that, because they're at an age when they're just talking and talking nonstop, and it's all over the place. So I was like, you're trying to discipline yourself that like when you play a note, and Miles Davis and all these guys, Coltrane, they all talk about that. Like, well, what is the reason for that note? And it's made me more have more economy in my own playing, and really just kind of be like wanking all over the place, like just going noodling everywhere. Because it's so easy on the guitar. It just feels cool to just be moving your fingers on the guitar and piano and stuff.
There's a reason that it's a cliche about guitar players constantly noodling and, you know.
And it can get really bad. Like I love like David Gilmour. If you listen to his guitar playing, he's not like a shredder or anything like that. And I like that style of Olympian type guitar playing too. I find I appreciate that quite a bit, but I really like guitar playing that's just like every note makes sense. Like Jerry Cantrell of Alice in Chains, like the way he played is like that. There's some songs in Pearl Jam that Eddie Vedder isn't their main guitar player, but he'll play like a little solo, and it's almost like if they don't know more, they're only playing the stuff that really matters and that's really emotional and kind of hits you. So I talk to them a lot about that. And then when they get into the lyric part, sometimes it'll usually be one person in the group that's writing the lyrics. I've had a few kids that they write together, but I'll tell them like, what is the reason for the song? What chords? And I tell them the chords are like clothes. What chords will go on the song that will make it make sense? And when you were talking about your piano playing, like you're writing the same stuff. That's why I love guitar chords, because a lot of people learn C, so just a regular C, and that could work in a song. Like maybe you're writing about something, but it might not work for the specific lyrics. So you might be writing about your dog ran away or something, and in the lyrics of that, they play a C. Is that the exact chord that matches that exact feeling? Maybe you need a C major 7, you just lift your finger, and you get that nostalgic type sound. And then there's all kinds of extra. You could add like a 9 in there, D. And so I tell kids it's like different tools, different hammers. There's like a certain drill that works for this, but this drill doesn't work for this. And so like if you're always using the same exact tool, you might have some really shoddy work that doesn't look that good because you're not using the right tool for you're making a desk or something like that. And so in music, it's the same thing. There's a certain chords that just really hit people emotionally really well, because I think the artist or the writer really spent some time thinking about it. I can sometimes hear, because I listen to a lot of albums, when certain bands have to put out an album faster than they wanted, and they didn't spend the time really tweaking the exact, compared to like they might have had like 5 just masterful, beautiful albums, and then one comes out really quick, and you're like, God, this isn't up to the level that they put out before. And then I'll go and look up and read about it, and they're like, we had to put it out, we were on a contract and all this different deadlines, so we had to get that out in 4 months compared to like a year. So I talk to them a lot about that. Like every chord, it's like you're stitching together the perfect sweater. Every chord, every sound, and for me now, like I'm like taking vocal lessons with you. Like I'm really my friend, my bass player in my band in Nova Scotia, Carl Laudadio. We used to call him Loud Audio. He would call it, every time we learn a new thing, he would call it the pile. He would just put down his head in defeat. It's another pile. It was another pile that we had to climb to get to the top and get past that to the next pile of learning. But in vocals, for the next album I'm working on, I was like, the amount of work it takes to really get super, super deep to make your vocal exactly what you want, for the song to be exactly what you want, is a lot of work. It's incredible. I was listening to your brother's new album, and I haven't gotten past the first song. Like I just keep rewinding the first song. There's this big giant climb in the beginning. I'm like, how much like that's like scaffolding that he put up, and then he tweet. I was like, this is insanity, but it's like inspiring that like there's so much music out there for kids to look at and be inspired by and go like, that's the level. You're not comparing yourself to the person beside you in your class. Like, you can go out and search out all these different albums and aim yourself, and you might not get there, but your level will go up higher and higher and higher. And you should really, in the storytelling, be as truthful as possible. If it's a song about love ice cream, make it as true. And I think if you do that, that intent, that people will that comes across as real. Like they feel that, and that's what people connect with. They can see through, like, when it's not, there's like, it's kind of contrived and stuff. So I try to get them to like really think about that at an early age. And it's kind of tricky, like they're in grade 7 and stuff, but some of them they're kind of like that anyway. Like, they're just like open. They don't have the problems of bills and owning houses and all that stuff yet. So they can tap into it and keep it pure. They can come up with some really, really great stuff. Yeah.
What do you think is missing in music education by and large?
Not so much for me. I have like an incredibly supportive of Min. MusiCounts has been just fantastic for me. Anthem Entertainment, the whole record label just came up here last month. 8 people from both groups. So I have like tremendous support. And I go after stuff. So I really do not sit back and whine about that I don't have enough storage. I just figure it out myself, and I present ideas. I try to present ideas as fully formed to administration as possible. So it's like they can't deny it. And a lot of that comes from reading about which albums record labels go after. Like, if you present an album to a record label and it's undeniable and you're a new artist, that's what you should be going for. It just should be undeniable. And they're like, oh, we're going to sign you because it's like, there's no reason. This is undeniable. So I think for the programs that are lacking funding, and it seems to be quite a few of them across the country and in America as well, is just like a vision, like a government vision of how important music is. We saw it during COVID. Like, everybody started, like, the only business I know up here that did extremely well is the music store. I used to teach lessons out of fiddles and sticks. Like, people were buying recording gear, mics, and people were at home. So they just started getting all that shipped to their door. And saying, once it dragged on, we realized we might be into this for a while. So people started saying, I'm going to take up guitar. I'm going to take up piano.
Yeah.
So if you had like a government vision where they realize, like, hey, it should be mandatory that every school has this and has the funding for it, that'd be really fantastic. But I'm not sure. Like, I really don't know if our government has ever played SimCity, because it doesn't seem so. Like, when you play SimCity, the old SimCity on Nintendo, it was obvious, like, how you make a country work and how you make a city work. Like, I'm not sure what's going on.
Maybe we should sit all the politicians down and make them play SimCity. Let's talk about your JUNO journey. You have been nominated for the JUNO MusiCounts Teacher of the Year Award 3 times in total, 2021, 2023, and 2024, and you took it home in 2024. Can you explain for our viewers how nominations and selection actually happen? I don't know if people actually, by and large, understand how the JUNO selection process even happens.
Yeah. So the selection process for the JUNOs, I didn't even know how it happens. Well, I knew how, for albums, how JUNOs happen, because I put in, my first album, Dreams, I put in, for a JUNO, I think that came out in 2016. And so if you're putting in for an album, you apply, you pay a fee, I think it's like $50, $100 or something. And you fill out a form, you send in your album, and then the JUNOs every year puts out a call for adjudicators. And so the former head of music NWT, he was an adjudicator last year for the R&B category, I think. And so I talked to him a lot when I came back, I said, so what happens? And they send him a ton of albums, and then he listened to a ton of R&B ahead of time to be prepared. So that part's interesting. I tell students, like, it's interesting to know how that's going on. But for the music, and then that made more sense because I'm seeing like a lot of great Canadian rock bands that are never in the Junos anymore. And I think some people just don't apply. They just they might be bitter, or they might just not want to, or they don't like Big Wreck, Mother Earth. I haven't seen them in the Junos, and they've been putting out just fantastic. Like a lot of these bands that went on their own labels after the big heyday of the 90s, they're putting out fantastic stuff, and stuff they wanted to put out under no record label direction. Like it's just what they always wanted to do.
Yeah. So
with the Music Counts Teacher of the Year award, so the first step is that Music Counts has a call for grants. They have different programs for different grants. And so up here in the north, I fix as many of our band instruments as I can. And for a long time, I could order the band materials like the screws and the springs for them. But they've kind of gone, the music stores have gone like Apple, where they don't want you fixing your own phone. They want you to send it to them. So when I went to order last time, they said, well, no, you have to be a music technician working in the store. So I couldn't even get the stuff I needed anymore. So I have to send it out, usually down to Edmonton. And so I was like, well, it's been about 12 years. Like, I had a student, Gabriel Jarku, that became an actor. And the last time he was playing saxophone, he's good at everything he does. He was like, why is there's like 3 paper clips holding together my saxophone? And I take the paper clips, and just because I didn't have the type of, you can't go to Canadian Tire and buy those type of screws for these instruments. And so I said, it's holding it together, man. I said, you're going off to act. So I applied to Music Counts for a grant a couple of times. To Music Counts to fix all my instruments and get some new books.
Because for people who don't know, when you have band instruments that are like classroom instruments, they have to go through a pretty regular repair schedule because it's just wear and tear throughout the year. It's not that the students are mistreating them or anything. They just get a lot of wear and tear. Yeah, and they do have to be repaired. You
have like 10 classes that are sharing the same instruments, and then you're washing the mouthpieces. They have their own reeds and stuff, but it's just, and they're elementary students, so they do stuff like roll the flutes all over their legs and bend every spring. They open cases and clarinets explode all over the floor. Like you front end load the teaching on that, but they're really small kids, and the things get dropped. And it was probably 12 years or maybe even 15 years that it hadn't been sent out. So I applied for, I fixed as much as I could, but I sent out everything with the grant at the first of last summer. And my saxophone's like, you're watching a kid do everything right, and it still sounds like it's not sounding good. It's because the valves or the pads are off, or there's air leakage and stuff. So I found out with the Music Counts grant. I applied a couple of times, and I think the second or third time I got it. And then after, I bought some new books too, because the books, they're all sharing the same books. The books get really worn out. And then Nick Godso of Music Counts called me and he said, you can apply for, we'll put your name in for the Juno. And I didn't even know what he was talking about. I was like, what are you talking about? And he goes, yeah. So like when you get a grant through us, then your name can go into the Juno. And he sent me the application. And both applications are really a gauntlet, where going back to what you said about writing, like that really helped me, because halfway through both applications for both the Juno, after he sent me that, and the initial grant, I was like, I remember saying to myself, this is like a gauntlet, like, because like how many teachers will go through, it's like pages and pages of really detailed stuff. And I just kept at it over a few months. I tinker away. And I remember he called me the first time, said, you've been nominated. He said, thanks for sticking it out. He said, a lot of people drop off. And I said, I could kind of sense like that's what it's to see who's serious. And that makes sense in certain things. Like you have so many people that have so many albums and so many people applying in different things that you got to have you have to have some seriousness to what you're doing.
Yeah.
So I filled it all out. And then after you're nominated, there's another huge paper that you have to write on different teaching questions. And that takes quite a while. And so the last time I was kind of upfront, I really started early because I was like, it takes a lot of thought answering these questions, and you have a certain limit of words, so you got to really tweak everything. So I made sure I didn't leave it to the last minute. And so that goes in, and then all the other teachers that they've put in for nominations go in, and then they call the top 5. That would be going on right now as well for the next top 5. So it was something I didn't know anything about at the time. And then MusiCounts really wants to just kind of promote as much schools having as many instruments as they can provide, and celebrating the teachers at all different levels that are teaching students across our country.
And it's important work that they're doing. I am very glad to know that they are doing it, because actually before you won this award, I was unaware of them as an organization, and that has changed now.
And they have more grants now. Like they have Slate Foundation joined on, and Anthem, and they have the grant I just received is a tech grant. So it's like for anything tech that you can use for your class for music. So it could be DJ stations. I used it for the whole time I was in 3 Across the Eye and Agony of the Leaves. I used a loop station, the Roland loop station, with my guitar pedal set up. And the new one is just incredible. It's a tabletop one. It's probably about that big. And it has the technology is just beyond now. It's gotten so advanced. So I've used it for that. So kids would be able to basically make studio sounding songs immediately. And then if you can get them into that, it's like when I started writing, I bought a Fostex cassette deck, one of the old ones that you see in a lot of the old rock documentaries. But you had to save up your money, and you had to be pretty serious to go out and buy that thing. For kids to have that right away and hear, man, we sound like a real band immediately. Is something else. Like my oldest son's in grade 6, and they formed a little band. They meet on Fridays, and called the Four Puppeteers. And so they're going to be recording on that. And it's just hilarious. Like they're playing Seven Nation Army and trying to learn the Metallica song that was in Stranger Things, Master of Puppets. But to be in grade 6 and have your music sound studio quality immediately, that pulls a kid in way faster than, because I was recording on old dictaphones that my father had when he'd do his sermons into them and stuff, and it always sounds like the old telephones and stuff like that. So you would present it to your friend, check it out, my new song, and you'd be like, because it just didn't. The quality was horrible, but they can sound good right away, and then that gives them the option in their head, like, man, I could actually do this. Like I could sound great immediately. So they have grants like that now. They have the thing that they do is they also have community grants. So if you're running a dance troupe or something that has music in a school that you go to the school, there's different grants on their website that you can apply for that. If you're having a choral group that needs some money. So a lot of, really, really great work to just be able to try to build it up. But also, it's it'd be great if the government noticed and realized this is how important this is for schools to have this. A lot of the stuff I adjudicated last year for the grants were maritime schools that are just out in the country that either never had a music program, or they're trying to figure a way to bring students that are misbehaving and getting into trouble in the community into the class to do a guitar program. So they're just applying for something to get them back into the school and playing. So it's definitely, you can put Band-Aids on everything, but if you work at the core of what the problems are, and music can really solve that, you can have a much better school experience.
Well, and I think the arts in general it is one of the places where the kids who are struggling elsewhere historically are able to find a home and a safe place and whether that's music or visual arts or drama and theater or whatever, but the arts, it's where a lot of the kids who feel like they don't fit in anywhere else and maybe will get lost out in the community otherwise.
Yeah.
It's where they can get drawn in and involved and find people who are their community. I just think it's a really important resource for a lot of reasons that aren't just about music. It extends so far beyond that.
Yeah, like self-esteem, and you can have kids that are having all like different identity challenges, like different emotional challenges, self-esteem, and just find like their own group, either in a rock band or they just get together after school and play guitar together. And I read all the rock biographies and music biographies, and a lot of it is like that. They end up building their own kind of community inside a band that becomes like a popular thing. Like you can read like Pearl Jam and these different bands. Like you got like a surfer that worked at a gas station, and then one of the biggest bands in the world. And then they can realize that they're okay. The way they are is all right. And it can travel out and connect to other people in a way that's positive.
When you went to the 2024 Junos, let's talk about that experience. I mean, part of it is it was kind of cool because it was back on your home turf, right? So you got to go home for that. But lots of people don't get to experience anything like that. So let us live vicariously through you for a minute and tell us about that experience.
Yeah, so the one in Edmonton was like just eye-opening to begin with. Living in Yellowknife, we all go to Edmonton quite a bit. People go for shopping and just to get out of the cold and different things. We go down to the Stollery quite a bit with our son. And it was just like the scope and the size of it just blew my mind. And just like the logistics of running that big of a show. I lived in Vancouver for a long time, and Halifax and Ottawa, and went to a lot of big rock shows, and you would kind of see a bit of what was going on behind the scenes, but not so much because you're showing up at the beginning of the show. But when you're at the Junos live telecast, in between commercials, there's people saying which sections can go to the bathroom, which sections are going to be, the camera's going to be on next. And then when you go to see a rock show, you're seeing 1-2 bands with the opening band. When you go into the Junos, you're seeing like 18 bands sometimes. Like it's a lot of, and they're all different. So when I was in Edmonton, I remember Tate McRae was standing beside me, and I didn't know who she was at the time. And then we went out, and then she's opening the show, and it's like they had all kinds of props and chair. It was like just unbelievable. And then that got swept off the stage during the commercial, and there's a rock band. And then that gets swept off the stage, and it's Alexis on Fire. And they only have the 2 minutes or whatever during the commercials, and they're so efficient. Like I've set up my own stage a zillion times. Like those guys and girls are fast. It's like England. It
is a serious pit crew.
Yeah, it's amazing. And then when I went to back home in Halifax, that was amazing because the hotel that we were staying at was, I always lived downtown in Halifax for like over a decade. So I think my last apartment was just down the street. So it was just, I go back every summer to Nova Scotia. I sometimes go downtown in Halifax. My sister lives in Halifax, but I don't get downtown too much. But to be back, and I brought Dave Dowse in my band with me, and we're just walking around, and it's not hot because it's the fall, which is good. And it was just surreal. And then I felt a lot of pressure because I had some family members there. A lot of my university friends were there, I got to play part of the Juno week because one of my buddy's bands was playing it. So me and Dave played that a little bit. And I saw a lot of my friends from different bands and from STFX, and it was just like paradise. It was unbelievable. Like I got to like people, and then some of the people you're meeting from bands that you haven't seen in like 25 years, and it just seems like they walked out the door. And our roommates that I had in Halifax, I met up with, and it was just like you never left. You look a little bit older, but it's just like so that part I was really grateful for. And then a lot of my, like, I remember my sister saying she couldn't believe the same thing, like behind the scenes. Like she said, like the stuff, she said she was going to just go for when I was there and then leave. And she stayed for the whole thing. She said, I've never seen anything like that. Like just the amount of people running around and moving stuff. And she was amazed by it. And then afterwards we went to Jim Cuddy. Every year he has a jam suite that he hosts in a hotel. Mm-hmm. And Dave and I played for that, and that's kind of what led to usually they were coming to a movie on the teacher at their school, and Dave and I played our version of Whiskey in the Jar, and they immediately said, we're going to send you to Toronto. But I didn't understand why at the time. I said, I guess so. It's like 4 a.m. I'm like, yeah, okay. And so then they sent me to Toronto in May, and then I realized, I walked in, I saw Taylor Swift's Diamond album on the wall and Stompin' Tom and Big Wreck and all this. And I was like, oh, they're trying to show them. And I play in the music industry and I'm also teaching. So that was like what the video was. And then I said, do you mind if I send you some footage of Yellowknife so that people, when they see they don't say that you didn't come here. You can see some of my school and Yellowknife, Northern Lights and stuff. And then I sent it to them, and then they said, that looks amazing. We're all going to come to Yellowknife. And then 8 of them, they all came here for a weekend, and they presented at my school, presented at the high school, presented to the local musicians. The mayor came out. They got to see the Northern Lights. They got to see a sundog. One was huge. They go right around the sun. It's just really beautiful. And now they're going to come up again. They want to see what it's like in the winter with the ice road and bring one of the bands from their roster. So it's just like, it just kept building on itself. And then when I didn't realize when I watched the movie that they used all of Agony of the Leaves music for the whole movie they made on me.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So I was listening, I was like, oh, that's my song. So yeah, the whole thing was like, just, it's super surreal when you're in it. Cause like at the Edmonton one, we were at tables, like really nice tables with wine and everything. We were sitting directly behind Connor McDavid and Nickelback. And then, at the Halifax one, we were in basically where you'd sit if you were playing hockey, like right against the boards. So it felt like I played hockey and all my life, and in grade 12, I broke my collarbone in grade 12 playing hockey. So it's kind of weird just to be sitting there. I was like, this feels like you're ready to jump over the boards. So when they announced my name, you have in your head like, oh, what? I was in complete shock. It was great. I had to watch the video. I could see David behind me doing like the rock and roll horns and everything when I watched the video. So, and then they just sweep you away. So you don't get to see the second half. They take you underneath the Metro Center. And you go. It's interesting because the last time I was underneath the Metro Center, it has a new name now, but was interviewing Rain Maida from Our Lady Peace. And I remember being underneath there, and they had like huge 18-wheelers and all their guitars and everything. And I was like, I was interviewing Rain and Mike Turner from Our Lady Peace back when I lived in Halifax. I was like, imagine being able to do this all the time. And so when I went underneath, that's immediately what I was like, man, I'm doing this. Yeah. And then they take you to a press room and they say, go into this room, and you think no one's in there. And it's a huge press room. And I walked in, I thought it felt like you're like Joe Biden or something. Like they're all out there. It's like so you had to answer a bunch of questions from different press people. And then they take you to get a photo with the Juno. And then this was new. They take you to like a rock and roll artistic kind of photo shoot, which I don't think they did before. So they have like Tegan and Sarah were right before me, and they had them on cool looking sofas and doing stuff. And then they had me holding the Juno, that looking like a rock guy. And then Maestro Fresh West, and then Talk was down getting an interview. And it was so interesting about Talk because my sister-in-law had asked me, can you teach me this song last summer? And I hadn't heard of the song. It was a little bit of Happy. And so I learned it and I taught it to her, and then she stopped practicing. So I went up to Talk. I said, can you make her like a video telling her to practice? And he did. And I texted it to her. Pretty cool. I texted it to her phone, and she just was in shock because he's talking directly to her. He's like, start practicing.
Yeah.
And then you just the only person I didn't get to speak to that I wish I did, because he came to Yellowknife to play the Folk on the Rocks Festival, was Hayden, who I think is just a fantastic singer, and just his songs are incredible. He has like one of my favorite love songs called Stem. It's really, really short, and the lyrics are it's just brilliant. But he was back there nominated for something, but I saw in the pictures afterwards, so I must have just missed him in the back. And then you go. They have like the after party at it's called the Liquor Dome. It's like 10 bars or something all connected.
Yeah.
And then we came back, and I guess the weirdest thing I didn't expect afterwards, and this has happened like close to 18 times now, like in Halifax, Edmonton, here, is like I just kept getting recognized everywhere. So I went to mail some of my stuff back from Halifax at the Shoppers Drug Mart that I used the whole time I was going to St. Mary's and lived in Halifax. And you just see someone looking at you, and then they're like, are you the guy? And then they come over and talk to you. And that became, my buddy said I should put it on a shirt, because they just I'd be walking down the street. Are you the guy?
I'm the guy.
And they would all come up, and they'd just be like super thankful that you're teaching music to kids and stuff. So that part I didn't expect at all. And it happened in Edmonton. I was at my son's hockey game cheering, and a guy kept looking at me, and I get really into hockey. So I thought he was going to tell me to quiet down. He's like, are you the guy? But I don't think I look like the typical band teacher. So that must be why.
Well, I mean, it sounds like a pretty cool experience all around. I didn't have that experience. I got to go to the Grammys one time when my brother was nominated. I was sitting way up in the nosebleeds, but it was really cool to be there. And I know what you mean about watching them change the sets. Yeah. I mean, that year they had like two sides of the stage set up. So they would be filming one side of the stage, and then, the curtain would be sort of drawn, but I was up high enough in the nosebleeds that I could sort of see behind it somewhat, and they'd be redressing the other side of the stage for the next number. So they'd have like one number to switch, because they'd go back and forth. And it really is like a pit crew. Like, they're so fast, and because they're doing major set changes plus band changes plus all the things, and
lights and everything.
When you are watching lights and everything, when you're watching from home, I don't think you get a sense of how much is going on behind the scenes that way to make it work, because it's a live show. That stuff isn't pre-record. I mean, occasionally they pre-record a segment or whatever, but by and large, that stuff is live, and so all of those changes are happening in real time. And that has to be a well-oiled machine. And
it's the same crew that was in Halifax was the same people I recognized, like in Edmonton. It was the same people on the red carpet, the same photographers. The same guy running the whole thing back, the behind the scenes of the commercials, the director of all of it, like, really. And those are the jobs, like I'm telling kids, like, these are real jobs that you don't have to be a rock star, but these are the real jobs that are out there. There's just like a multitude of like the songwriting jobs, and the songwriting jobs of people that never perform their own songs. They're just writing songs for other artists. There's all the people running around on the bottom. That's the part when they announce that you won. I was looking at different cameras because at the Edmonton Junos, I brought my friend Vaughn Woodruff, and his wife would keep texting us to get off his phone because you can see the cameras. There'd be cameras aiming at you, but the one that goes red is the one that's live. And I knew that, but he didn't. So every time the camera would come on, I'd wait if they were just filming our table or something, and that would be the time to be on his phone, and she'd be texting him, "Get off your phone!" But she said, "Steven's looking at the thing, and you're not." And he goes, "How do you know?" And I said, "It's the red one." So then he finally realized. So it's like I don't think the regular, just general Canadian public, if they haven't gone, realize like what a big week it is. Because I lived in Halifax, the last Junos that was in Halifax, and I was working for music newspapers, and I don't think that I got picked to go and write at the Junos, so I didn't really have a clue how big it was. I think Coldplay played at that one too, and because it's the whole week leading up is the Juno Fest. And they have mini Junos at like libraries with the kids that are nominated. There's like 100 bands that play. So the second night we were there, my friend's band was playing. Then we got to go up and play a couple of songs. But there's bands in every bar all week going on. And it's just like a whole 5 days of music. It's not just the final night. And then there's the Junos that happen before the main telecast, where it's like jazz, gospel, and all the classical music type stuff. So that's a whole
all the categories that they think people don't care enough to watch. They put on the non-broadcast event.
Yeah. And I think this year they broadcast some of that, which they didn't do before. So maybe they're getting wise to it, I guess. Like I watched Feist one for her category, but it's the same thing. That one had 2 stages, so you have a huge dinner, just a beautiful dinner, and they have a stage on this side, and a band plays, and this one's being set up, and it's a whole night, and there's a whole cocktail party mixer that's going on in the background. So it's like a massive thing. They'd be really wise to kind of take high school students and put them in positions in these different events, just to get them into the industry and see like what it's like.
Yeah,
because I was very lucky during high school. I worked for Louis Del Grande, who was on the old 80s shows, seeing things, and he wrote King of Kensington and stuff like that. So I got to see like behind the scenes of like what it takes to write a script and all these different things. And at the Junos for the first Junos with the classical music and stuff, I was in a suit, but I had made a shirt called with his face from the show, but it said Junoing things instead of seeing things. And then he saw it. He left me like a wonderful message on my phone that was pretty funny. But having that background and seeing something from behind the scenes, you can tell somebody about anything. But if you could bring kids into it and say, "Hey, we're going to get you to work this backstage thing," and just follow along, they could see like, "Oh man, this is real, and this is a possibility. If I follow this path, I could get to this and be doing this." Especially like photography and all that kind of stuff.
Time-wise, I think we have to wrap it up here. But I am so appreciative of you joining me today. I think this is a glimpse into music education that most people don't get, and a Juno journey that most people don't get. So I really appreciate you joining me today and sharing all your knowledge and experiences with us.
Thanks very much. I'm extremely grateful. It was unbelievable experience, and it keeps going, which is that part is amazing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Where can people find you, Stephen? Website, socials, things like that?
I'm on Facebook. So my band is Agony of the Leaves. So I'm on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. I'm mostly working this year on. I want to make an undeniable album that Anthem will look at. Because
yeah.
So and just like really concentrating on like voice lessons with you and the vocals and stuff, and the whole experience just inspired me, and inspired me to bring. It was really great having Anthem up here to inspire my songwriting groups and my classes, so they could see that these are all possibilities, and they're different possibilities now. Where before you were discovered, now I think artists put all they have to look at like a little entrepreneur business where they put all the work up front. They make their socials pop. They make their own merch, and really, in some ways, it can even be better because it's your vision. Like if you were making your own coffee shop, you would really think about the labels, like on your cups and what type of coffee and all that. So in music, it's the same thing. It's really kind of naive to think like, well, I'm just going to sit in my room and just play guitar, and then someone's going to suddenly discover me. And I've met people like that, and I've met tons of people that have fantastic songs, but they need the guidance to get them out there because they're really in that outdated mode that they're going to be discovered someday. There's just too much music out there that there's no one really looking.
Yep.
They're not actively seeking like they were in the 70s. You got to put out the work and do the effort. But if you go on Instagram, you can see people have really, they have their very defined exact visions of what they are presenting. So, I don't actively keep up on my socials as much now until there's like more product, I guess, coming up. So when the album, we'll just tinker away on that as much as possible, and then get more active on socials. But I got videos for Agony of the Leaves on YouTube, and I have TikTok too, but TikTok I only opened. The Tragically Hip has been super interesting in the last while, where they're doing guitar tutorials. So they did one yesterday on Nautical Disaster, and then they had ones where you could join them, so you could split the screen. And so I did one of those for Wheat Kings, and then they liked that. And then I did they did the same for Saskatophilia with their last album. You could put covers. So I did one of our youngest son, Gaius as Elvis, and they posted it. And there's one of me on the ice road plugged into I made an amp out of a snow block, and they posted that too. And it's interesting to see that because like the Tragically Hip, I was part of their theirs, and the Tea Party, you could be part of their newsletter. And you would get a newsletter in the mail. Tea Party used to always send you an incense stick. So some of those bands were like kind of ahead of the internet. And now I think all bands have to really be engaged with their fans, like, and doing stuff every day, like asking questions and stuff. It's a really different world.
Yeah, it is. It is indeed. Well, we will drop all your links in the show notes for people to find. And once again, just thanks for joining me. It's been great to sit here and talk shop.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Thanks a lot.